This podcast exists for the edification and benefit of the people of Noblesville Baptist Church, as well as our surrounding community. Our aim is to use this platform as an additional discipleship tool for the discussion of social, political, and theological topics in order to glorify God and grow in Christlikeness. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the NBC After Hours podcast. I think we're all the way in the grand scheme of things. We're all the way to this will be episode 31 and 32 that'll be coming out. And in this particular season, season 3, this will be episode 7. So we've come a long way. Already at 30 episodes, haven't we? I should say, haven't we? Who am I addressing? I'm here with Seth, Pastor Seth Lehman.
Greetings, salutations.
And today because we're in this theme of getting people's testimonies from our church. Today we are joined with Jim Weaver.
Thank you.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive into talking with Jim, just to kind of set our bearings, our focus in this third season is to hear from people. Hear from people within the congregation and hear how they came to know the Lord. Hear a little bit about how God has helped them throughout their Christian life. We started off the season with a couple of testimonies of individuals that God saved out of addiction. And last couple of episodes, we looked at the life of Brother Larry Kerfoot and how God saved him really out of self-righteousness and how God has been at work in his life over the years and what a blessing that was. And so it's our privilege today to introduce our listener to Brother Jim Weaver. Round of applause.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll put that in there.
But Brother Jim, just in case some within our church don't know you, or I'm sure there's a few listeners that don't even go to our church, give us just a snapshot, a brief, how would you introduce yourself to a stranger?
Well, if it were a stranger, I'd probably start out by telling them I was just a Midwestern boy from Kansas and raised by a Christian mother and an unsaved father. And had the opportunity then to go away to a boarding school. My father had passed away by that time. And I went to this boarding school, and though I'd accepted the Lord at a very early age, that's where things solidified. And being under the sound of it was a Christian boarding school, and being under the sound of the Word every day, the Holy Spirit did His work and made some changes in my life. And I guess I'd have to say that's where I became an adult. So
where was that boarding school?
That was Prairie Bible Institute in Three Hills, Alberta, Canada.
Wow, you went from Kansas to Canada.
Yeah, my wife, I met her there. We were sophomores in high school, in fact, when we met. But my brother...
Are you explaining the connection of how a Kansas boy gets to Canada?
Yes.
Okay.
My older brother really kind of raised me after my dad died. And he and a friend were going up there, and they didn't have any money, so they were looking for a school that was pretty cheap. And in this school, you could work part-time and get by on a very, very low tuition. So they decided to go up there, but when they read the rules, and it was very strict between boys and girls, they were on one side of the dining room, the boys were on the other. Their dorms are on one side of campus, the boys were on the other.
Right.
But they thought they'd go up there and change things a little bit. And
how'd that work out for them?
They got changed. Not the rules, but the boys.
Oh, okay.
And it was because of my brother Max, who's now with the Lord. It was because of that I went up for high school. They also had a high school boarding school.
So Max was kind of the pioneer.
Yeah,
Max kind of discovered the place.
right.
And through his exposure to the place and having a positive experience, the idea somehow came. Was it to your mom?
No, it was really to him because he knew, in those days, bad boys weren't bad boys by our definition today. We'd break out the street lights and throw rotten pears at the cars as they went by the corner and stuff like that. It wasn't drugs and that, but he just felt that Mom didn't have control over me, and she didn't. She was a nurse and she was working, and I was pretty footloose and fancy free. So he talked me into going up there for 1 year.
Wow.
And of course, Mom was in agreement. And then that's kind of where the Lord got a hold of me.
So you went up as a sophomore in high school.
Yes.
To Alberta, Canada.
Yes.
To a boarding school.
Yes.
You had to be 14, 15?
Probably 14 because I was young for the year of school I was in.
Wow. Okay. Well, then just keep rolling with the story. You get there, and obviously God uses that place in your life, but tell us some of the ways that God used that place.
Well, I hadn't been there very long, and we got word that my oldest brother had died.
Oh.
And so we had to go back to Kansas and went back for the funeral. We were planning on staying, and Mom would see nothing of that. And we had a fellow that was head of Kansas Rural Bible Crusade that stayed in our upstairs apartment. And he said, he was single. He said, "You guys go back. I'll take care of your mom."
Wow.
So we went back, and that's, the Lord began to work, and I went through 3 years of high school there, and 3 years of Bible college. It's a Bible college now,
Okay.
but it was just an institute then, like Moody Bible Institute or something like that.
Okay.
And my wife-to-be and I were we couldn't really get together except her dad was a local farmer. And so she lived downtown. And the Dean of Men was quite friendly, understood young people. So if she had a paper to type, I had a portable typewriter and she didn't. And I'd say, "Can I take my typewriter down?" And yeah, he said, "You can do that." And I said, "Well, what if they asked me to stay for a meal?" "Yeah, you can do that."
Nice.
And so Audrey and I weren't strangers when we got married a month after graduation. I had been up there all one summer. We'd spent time together. But we had talked about going to Brazil. And
As missionaries.
as missionaries. And the mission board we were communicating with specialized in working with young people. And they suggested that we have a degree from a college, not just a institute certificate.
Okay. Sure.
So we went from there, worked that summer in Topeka, and then went on down to South Carolina and went to Columbia Bible College, which now is Columbia International University.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated from there with, excuse me, with all the transfer credits and everything they gave me from Prairie. Graduated from there in 3 semesters. And Audrey was expecting then, and so we were invited back to my home church to the role of assistant pastor.
Okay.
So I went back and I was head of the young people and did a number of things. And And the pastor called me in one day, and he said, I don't think you ought to be a pastor. And, that was an iron sharpens iron moment.
Yeah. Probably not what you're looking to hear.
Not really. But he said, you go into a hospital room, and he said, when you leave, they're worse off than when you went. And he said, you've preached a couple funerals, and he says, you can't get through without blubbering and crying. And you didn't even know one of the people. So
He was not appreciative of your tender heart.
Whatever it was. But anyway, we really prayed about it. And about that time, my son was born, oldest son was born. I have 2 children.
Now, give us a general time frame. Like this is 19, fill in the blank.
Oh,
You don't have to be precise.
1958.
Okay.
7.
Late 1950s.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, he says, I think you're a great teacher, and everybody loves your teaching. Everybody loves your preaching. But he said, you just don't have that ability to control yourself in those situations to be a pastor. And so we went to a little mission school down in Arkansas. They didn't pay us anything, and the church sent us $50 a month, and I think my mom sent us $25 a month, and then we just lived by faith.
Wow.
So
I bet you can look back at that, and anytime
Yeah.
God puts you in a place where you have to live by faith, there are always wonderful, small, and sometimes big ways where the only explanation of how
Yeah.
you got by was the Lord's provision.
Well, we were broke at Columbia Bible College, and I came out of the grocery store one day, had just spent the last, and looked down beside the car, and there was a $5 bill.
Amen.
And we lived on soup bone soup for I don't know how long, but I know I hate it. And but we just boiled. They'd give us the ends of bones,
Okay.
and we'd just boil them, put in some vegetables, and eat it. So Audrey said, "Well, if you got one on down there, look under the car. Maybe there's another." And there was.
Really?
So I went inside, told the guy told the manager, because we shopped there all the time, told the manager I'd found the money, and if anybody came in, I couldn't pay it back right now and I needed it, but just let me know and I'd see that they got paid back. Well, he wouldn't have told anybody. If somebody came, I think he was on our side.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't think he would have said a thing. Anyway, Columbia Bible College was a good experience for me because I didn't have some of the sociology, psychology, some of these things that were required. And the first time I encountered them, I got them from a Christian point of view.
Yeah.
And that made all the difference in the world.
Sure.
So anyway, I went from there. I figure if I'm going to be a teacher, I better get qualified. So I went from there to Seattle Pacific University,
Okay.
Free Methodist school. And it was pretty solid back in those days. But I can still remember telling a theology teacher, or his telling me, and that's where I got the phrase that I used earlier with you, that he said, "Mr. Weaver, you have a right to be wrong if you want." Now, we've got to quit discussing that and go on to the next.
Okay. Sure.
So anyway, the only thing we really had to take were education courses and stuff.
Okay.
I stayed there through a master's degree.
So did you at that time know or have the clarity that you wanted to give yourself to a ministry of education? Did you have that on the mind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had given up the idea of the mission field. We had a lot of classmates, Moody Bible Institute, Prairie Bible Institute, a couple other schools. They had oodles and oodles of missionaries on the field.
Okay.
And there was a time when the church didn't handle it. And it was these independent Bible institutes that carried world missions.
Okay.
And anyway, I had, other than my friends that were out there, and I kind of envied them, and still communicate with 3 or 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of gave it up, looked at education as a ministry, and worked a year in the public school so that I could get my administrative credentials.
Okay.
And then I got a call from somebody I'd known in Seattle that moved back to Indianapolis.
Mm.
And they were associated with the Best Lock Company, and the Best Lock Company spearheaded, or Walter Best spearheaded the start of Heritage Christian School.
Okay.
And then I came the second year and was there 15 years.
Heritage Christian School had started, but
It had been going, I think, 1 or 2 years.
1 or 2 years. And when you meet this guy and you're invited to come join what they're doing, what did they invite you to come do? Did they want you to teach? Did they want you to administrate?
They wanted me to administrate.
Okay. So
And
at that point, it would be just a small upstart Christian school.
If you want to call 225 students small, yeah. Compared to
compared to what it is now.
Compared to what it is
sure.
now.
But you're right to say it's all a matter of perspective, because in many people's minds, a Christian school of over 200 is a substantial sized Christian school.
Well, they got off to a flying start. The guy that was their PR man could sell refrigerators to Eskimos.
Okay.
And when we got here, we had to do a lot of rearranging of curriculum, because there had been advertising that any high school subject you want to take, we can teach it,
Okay.
And but anyway, I came, and
give me a time frame. So Heritage Christian Schools, is this in the 70s?
I came in 67.
67. All right. The Christian school movement across the United States really had just really gotten going. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
That's true. And I'd have to say, in all honesty, some of those schools were because of the big push of integration.
Okay.
Now that's not a white mark on we as Christians.
Sure.
But when I came with the understanding, if you qualify, you can come.
Okay.
And that qualification was both a spiritual and academic. We tested every student that came in.
So as you recall, Heritage Christian School was not one of those schools that was founded with the spirit of segregation.
No, it was not. Because the people that started it, I mentioned Walter Best's big push, he had his children in a Christian school in which I worked in Seattle.
Ah.
And so that was a connection there.
Okay.
And
hence he recruits you to come over here.
right.
Yeah.
So anyway, Audrey and I, they didn't give us much time, but we had a quick prayer meeting about it, and decided that we would accept their offer. And there's a little parenthesis in here. I don't want to get started on it too much. But some old prairie friends came down the night before we were to leave. Oh, the Bestlock truck, a big 3-ton truck, was out there for some reason, and they needed somebody to drive it back.
Okay.
So I got this call from the lock company attorney, and he said, we got a truck out there. We'll send you a credit card, and you can load your furniture and everything up and drive it back for us.
Okay.
So they paid for overnight lodgings, everything to get back. And but the morning after the truck was loaded, I get a phone call. And the fellow that had contacted me about coming back here had a big rift with the board of directors.
Oh.
And he said, don't come, Jim. And I said, look, my house sold in a week. My car sold extra car sold in 3 days. I said, where am I going to go? So I said, I'm coming anyway.
Wow.
And he said, well, that's what I hoped you'd say. So we made a little detour to visit Audrey's folks up in Alberta, Canada, and then came down to Indianapolis in 1967 and started school. And then within a couple years, they had a little bit of trouble with the administration, not any big trouble, but just in keeping them.
Okay.
And so they asked me if I would take the lead of the school. And I said, yeah, I would. And so I served in that. I was there at Heritage 15 years, and I probably served in that position for 13 of those 15 years.
Wow.
Well, I sure hope that you have enjoyed this first episode here with Jim Weaver. It was a blessing for me to just be able to sit back and listen to Jim's story and to see how God has worked in his life. It was just a wonderful thing for me to listen to, so I hope it has blessed you as well. Remember, if you want to hear the second half of this conversation, turn on the notifications, hit that subscribe button on whatever app that you choose to listen to the podcast on, and we release episodes Friday mornings at about 6:30 a.m. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss that second half of the conversation, then be sure that you are looking out for our episodes Friday mornings, 6:30 a.m. Well, thank you all once again for tuning into this episode, and we will see you next week. Thank you, and God bless.